Hey there, Bible nerds. Welcome back to Chapters and Chuckles by Kaye, where we dive into the Bible chapter by chapter. Imagine making a vow so serious you can't cut your hair, or touch a dead body, or even drink a drop of wine. But what happens if you accidentally break that sacred vow? So, today we continue our journey in the book of Numbers, covering chapters 6 through 10. So, go ahead and grab your drink, get comfy, and let's dive in. Chapter 6. This chapter opens with God talking to Moses about something called the Nazirite vow. Nazirite vow, which I like to call the extreme devotion challenge. Moses is probably relaying this to the Israelites with a raised eyebrow because it's a doozy. This special vow can be taken by any Israelite, man or woman, who wants to dedicate themselves to the Lord in a big way. And I mean big. You basically agree to live under strict conditions for a time to show your devotion. What are the rules? Well, glad you asked. Rule number 1, no grapes. Seriously, no grapes in any form. So, no wine or beer. So, forget wine Wednesdays. No grape juice, no vinegar, no raisins, not even the skins or seeds of grapes. Our hypothetical Nazarite friend is the person at the party pointedly sipping water while everyone enjoys a nice Cabernet. They are that dedicated. Rule number 2, no haircuts at all. So you're going full rock star, letting the hair grow wild and free. If you start the vow with a buzz cut, by the end you might resemble a shaggy mountain man or a woman. Split ends, too bad. The long hair is a symbol of being set apart from God. Imagine the conversations around the camp like, whoa, check out the Miriam's hair. She must be under a Nazarite vow, or she's been avoiding supercuts intentionally. Rule number 3, no touching dead bodies. This one's a bit more serious. Even if a close family member passes away, a Nazarite must not go near the corpse. It's a way of avoiding ritual impurity. So if Uncle Eli passes, the Nazarite sends condolences from afar. It's tough, but again, this vow is all about serious commitment. Now, accidents happen, of course. What if someone does end up accidentally breaking the vow? So this chapter covers that too. Say our Nazarite is minding their own business and suddenly a person keels over dead right next to them. So now they're unclean through no fault of their own. What to do? The text says the Nazarite must undergo a reset. They have to shave off the hair they've been growing on the 7th day of cleansing and bring a couple of pigeons or doves to the priest on the 8th day. One bird is a sin offering and one is a burnt offering, basically saying, I'm sorry, Lord, let's start over. And the reset. After the reset, the poor Nazarite begins the vow period all over again from scratch. Finally, when the Nazarite's vow period is successfully completed, whether it was a month, a year, or however long they promised, it's celebration time with sacrifices, of course. They bring a whole suit of offerings to the tent of meetings, a year-old lamb for a burnt offering, a year-old lamb for a sin offering, and a ram for a peace offering, plus grain offerings and drink offerings. It's like a big graduation ceremony. The most dramatic part, though, is the now former Nazirite shaves off all the dedicated hair, all those months or years of growth, and throws the hair into the fire on the altar under the peace offering sacrifice. So, yes, you heard that right. They offer their hair to God by burning it to the altar. Only after that they can finally go home, grab a glass of wine, and toast to completion. Imagine the first sip of wine after months of abstinence. Probably hits harder than usual, but I wouldn't know because I don't drink at all. With the Nazirite instructions given, the chapter switches gears to a beautiful moment. God tells Moses to teach Aaron and his sons the special priestly blessing to speak over the Israelites. This is one part of chapter 6 that might sound familiar because it's often used in services even today. Picture Aaron standing before the people, hands raised as he proclaims his blessing from God. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. So these poetic lines are the Aaronic blessing, and they are just as uplifting as they sound. In essence, may God take good care of you, smile on you, and give you peace. It's like a divine stamp of love and protection. The chapter ends with God saying, "In this way they will put my name on the Israelites and I will bless them." It's a heartwarming finish to a chapter that started with the hair and grapes. So, on one hand, we have people going above and beyond in devotion, and on the other hand, we have God's gracious blessing freely given to all his people. So, what can we glean from this chapter's mix of vow and blessing? On a deeper level, the Nazirite vow shows the value of dedication and discipline. Sometimes people feel moved to devote themselves to God in a special way, to step back from life's comfort and focus on spiritual growth. It wasn't required of everyone, but it was available to everyone willing. Um, uh, democratization of holiness, if you will. This teaches us that devotion is not just for an elite few. Anyone, men or women, as the text explicitly says, could choose to draw closer to God with extra commitments. It's a reminder that sometimes going the extra mile in our spiritual life can be challenging, but it can also be profoundly meaningful. Meanwhile, the priestly blessing at the end of the chapter balances that human effort with God's grace. Not everyone would take a Nazirite vow, and God knows we're imperfect, but everyone in the community receives God's blessing of profound grace and peace. It's such a lovely image. After all the laws and vows, God basically says, "Tell the people I love them and I'm with them." The deeper lesson, holiness and grace go hand in hand. Yes, we strive to dedicate ourselves, but ultimately it's God's gracious face shining on us that gives us peace. We do our part and God does what only God can do, bless us far beyond what we deserve, and he does that time and time and time again. Think about our lives. We might set aside times to focus on our faith. Maybe a fast, a retreat, or giving up something to grow spiritually. Those are our mini Nazirite moments of devotion. I know every now and then, at least once a month, I try to fast from social media. So, yeah. So, dedication is great, but dependence on God's blessing is key. And the best part, God wants to bless us. The Lord bless you and keep you and give you peace. Hearing those words, we are reassured that we are under the smile of a loving God. All right, fun fact corner. Let's see. Anyone can take the vow. So unlike many special religious roles in the Old Testament, which were only for men or only for certain tribes, the Nazirite vow was open to women too. The text explicitly says when either a man or a woman makes the vow of a Nazirite. So this is pretty progressive for its time. It shows that spiritual zeal wasn't limited to by gender. Daughters of Israelites could grow their hair long and avoid the vineyard, just like the sons could. In fact, later on, famous biblical figures like Samson were, Nazirites from birth. Though Samson had a bit of trouble keeping his vow, as you might know, haircuts and Philistines don't mix well. Still, the Nazirite vow stands out as an example of personal commitment to holiness available to anyone feeling specially thankful or devoted. And everyone, that is it for chapter 6. All right, chapter 7. This chapter is one of those chapters that, if it were a movie, might be a montage scene, repeating actions with different people over and over. It's also famously long, the longest chapter in Numbers, actually. But I'm gonna try to keep it short. But don't worry, I'm still gonna hit the highlights with a chuckle. I try. The setting. The tabernacle has just been set up and anointed, just like a grand opening of God's dwelling place among the people. Now, all the tribal leaders are lining up with housewarming gifts for this new house of God. Think of it as a dedication ceremony for the altar, and everyone bringing presents. And boy, did they bring presents. First, the chapter tells us about a collective gift. The leaders brought 6 large covered wagons and 12 oxen to pull them. Why wagons? Because the Levites in charge of the tabernacle furnishing could use some U-Haul help. God tells Moses to distribute these. The Gershonites, who carry the fabric parts of the tent, get 2 wagons and 4 oxen. And the Merarites, who handle heavy frames and boards, get 4 wagons and 8 oxen. The Kohathites, however, get 0 wagons. Presumably, they stand there looking a bit jealous, but they don't need them since they carry the most sacred item on their shoulders. You can't just toss the Ark of the Covenant in a cart-like luggage, So picture a mini ceremony where Moses hands out wagon keys. 2 wagons for you, Gershonites, don't speed. 4 wagons for you, Merarites. You've got the heavy lifting. Kohathites, sorry, you're walking, but with holy cargo. After the wagons, it's time for the individual offerings by each tribe's leader. And here's where the chapter becomes the 12 days of Christmas, except it's 12 days of identical offerings. God instructs that each day one tribe leader will present his offering for the dedication of the altar. In total, there are 12 leaders, 1 per tribe, and they each come on their appointed day with the exact same gift. I like to imagine by day 6 or 7, the Israelites are like, yep, we can recite this in our sleep now. So let's follow day 1 as an example. Nachshon, son of Aminadab from the tribe of Judah, step up. Judah goes first, of course. He brings a silver plate and a silver basin, both filled to the brim with fine flour mixed with oil. The plate weighs 130 shekels and the basin 70 shekels. So they're hefty, solid silver dishes, pretty much. Then he presents a gold dish weighing 10 shekels full of incense. Fancy. But wait, there's more. Animals galore. For a burnt offering, Nachshon offers 1 young bull, 1 ram, and 1-year-old male lamb. So imagine a little lamb going, bah, in the arms of a priest. For a sin offering, one male goat, because goats make great, offerings. And for the grand finale, the peace offering, 2 oxen, 5 rams, 5 male goats, and 5 yearling lambs. It's like a small petting zoo per tribe, all headed for the altar barbecue. That's day 1. So day 2, Nethanel, son of Zuar of Issachar, comes forward with exactly the same items. Silver plates, 130 shekels, silver basin, 70 shekels with flour and oil, gold dish with incense, the same lineup of animals. Day 3, Zebulun's leader does the same. By day 4 or 5, if you're following along in the text, you're experiencing deja vu. It's as if each leader says, well, I saw what Nachshon brought on day 1. I'll do exactly that. No one wanted to be outdone or bring something different. There's a charming equality here. Each tribe gives the same costly, generous gift. No tribal competition like, our offering is better than yours. Nothing like that. It's all uniform, perhaps to show that each tribe is equally invested in God's house. Now let's fast forward. This happens for 12 days straight. So the text repeats the inventory for each tribe's leader. The names change, but the gifts remain identical. So if this were our, podcast live, I'd probably start singing, on the 5th day of offering, my true tribe gave me the 5 gold goats. By day 12, I feel like I'm the only one who gets my jokes. By day 12, Ahira, son of Enan of Naphtali, closes it out with the same offerings. It's like watching a relay race where every runner carries the same thing to the finish line. What's that thing that the those athletes, runners, whatever, hold, whatever, the stick thingy, whatever. Anyways, so kind of like that. After listing all 12, the chapter kindly gives us a grand total of the loot, just in case our eyes glaze over during repetition. It is a lot. So altogether, the Israelites gave 12 silver plates and 12 silver basins, totaling 2,400 shekels of silver. That's a hefty pile of silver, about 60 pounds in modern weight. And 12 gold dishes of incense weighing 120 shekels total. On the livestock side, for burnt offering, 12 bulls, 12 rams, 12 lambs, and 12 goats for the sin offering. And for the peace offerings, a whopping 24 bulls, 60 rams, 60 male goats, and 60 lambs given in sacrifice. If you add those up, that's 207 animals. It's an enormous communal gift, signaling, we are all in this together to honor God. After the final accounting, the chapter ends with a delightful little note about Moses. It says that when Moses went into the tent of meeting to speak to the Lord, he would hear God's voice speaking to him from above the mercy seat on the Ark of the Covenant, between the 2 cherubim. How cool is that? In the midst of all of these gifts given to God, God still has something to give back. His own voice and guidance to Moses. It's like a behind the scene peek. After the public ceremony, Moses slips into the tent, and the voice of God resonates from the sacred space between the golden cherubim on the ark, conversing with Moses as a friend. The ultimate confirmation that all these offerings and the tabernacle have achieved their purpose. God is dwelling among his people and talking with them. If this were a movie, we'd end the chapter with Moses stepping out of the tent with a glow, maybe giving a thumbs up to the waiting Israelites. Like, I heard him, he's with us. On the surface, this chapter might seem like just a long list of gifts and names, But let's reflect on the meaning behind this grand offering spree. This was the moment when Israel said, "We are dedicating this altar and we're dedicating ourselves along with it." Each tribe brought their best, and importantly, all brought the same. There's a beautiful lesson in equality and unity here. No tribe was like, we're the biggest, so we'll bring double. Or we're small, so we'll bring less. Nothing like that. Each gave an identical extravagant offering. It shows that in worship and dedication, everyone stands on equal footing. In God's eyes, every tribe, and by extension, every person, has equal worth and an equal share in supporting the community of faith. For us today, think of how communities come together to build a place of worship or to support a cause. We may not all give the same dollar amount or the same kind of help, but the spirit is similar. Each tribe gives their best offering out of devotion. The repetition underlines that consistent generosity. Every day, another leader faithfully stepping up to contribute. It's almost meditative in its rhythm. Generosity day after day. There's a sense of reliability and commitment to God's word. Also, don't miss the end note. Moses hearing God's voice in the tent. After all the people's giving, God gives back with his presence. The lesson: when we dedicate space and resource to God, God meets us there. They dedicated the altar with great fanfare, and God honored that by speaking from that very sanctuary. In our lives, when we dedicate some space, be it time in the day, a quiet corner for prayer, or our resources for God's purpose, we often find God's presence and guidance become clearer. The Israelites gave abundantly, and it culminated in communion with God. Lastly, the unity of the gifts can teach us about cooperation over competition in spiritual life. It wasn't a contest of who could, outgive whom. It was coordinated act of worship. In a world that often pushes us to compete, this chapter is a refreshing example of people harmonizing in devotion. Imagine a community where everyone is focused on the mission rather than outshining each other. That's something to aspire to. So the next time you hit a tedious list in life, think, what's the heart behind these details? In Numbers chapter 7, the heart is an outpouring of generosity, unity, and celebration of God's dwelling among us. And that's a lesson worth repeating. Maybe not 12 times in a row, but you get the point. All right. Fun fact corner. So if you thought this chapter felt long, actually try to make it short. It could have been longer, but anyways, it is long. This chapter with 89 verses actually is the longest chapter in the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible. It's basically tied for second longest chapter in the entire Bible. Yeah, that's how much I made this chapter so much shorter. Yeah, but the longest one is Psalms 119. Or Psalms 1, yeah, it's longer than this one for sure. And most of those 89 verses on this chapter are the same sequences of offerings repeated, for each of the 12 tribes. That's why it's long. But why so repetitive? So the ancient text often emphasizes the importance of repetition, and I actually do that myself too. And most of the time, I do this subconsciously, and people tell me like, "Why are you repeating yourself?" I don't know. I just want to emphasize. I just feel like some things that I say need to be repeated, more than once or twice. So, yeah. So by listing each offering separately, the writer honors each tribe. So by the writer, it would have to be Moses, right? Moses wrote the Pentateuch. Anyway, so the writer honors each tribe's gift gifts individually, like reading out the name of each donor at a big fundraising banquet. Everyone gets their moment of recognition in Scripture, no matter if the gifts are identical, they still get their credit, their recognition. All right, and that is it for chapter 7. All right, chapter 8. This chapter is a chapter of light and purification. It kicks off with a brief note about the menorah, the golden lampstand in the sanctuary. God tells Moses to instruct Aaron on how to set up and position the 7 lamps so they cast light forward in front of the lampstand. Aaron, ever the dutiful priest, does exactly that. Picture Aaron going into the holy place at evening, trimming the wicks and positioning the lamps just right so that the light isn't just flickering randomly. It's directed to illuminate the area in front. The text even reminisces Wait, I lost my train of thought. Anyway, so this lampstand was made of hammered gold, crafted exactly as per God's design. So basically, this chapter begins with, "Let there be light," properly angled light. It's a small detail, but it shows the care for even how the light of worship is presented. So the main chunk of the chapter, though, is about the Levites getting consecrated for service. If you recall, the Levites are the tribes set apart to assist the priest and do the work around the tabernacle. We've counted them, assigned them roles, and now it's makeover time. Spiritual makeover, that is. God tells Moses, "Take the Levites from among the Israelites and cleanse them." How to do that? There is a step-by-step ritual. Almost, I'm trying to find the word. Almost like a purification ceremony / initiation for these tabernacle workers. First, sprinkle them with purifying water. Next, have them shave their entire body with a razor. And yes, entire body. Eyebrows gone. Hair gone. Beard gone. Armpit hair gone. This is the ultimate buzz cut from head to toe. One imagines, a group of burly Levite men suddenly looking like newborn babes, smooth as silk. It sounds funny, but it had serious point. It was a tangible way to symbolize leaving their old life and presenting themselves completely new and clean for God's service. So, yeah. And maybe it helped with hygiene in close quarters. Who knows? After the great shave, they must wash their clothes and thus, cleanse themselves. So the Levites are now physically and symbolically squeaky clean. Then comes the sacrificial part. The Levites take a young bull along with its grain offering and another young bull for a sin offering. These will be used to atone for and dedicate the Levites. Now Moses gathers all the people of Israel. This is a community affair. Everyone's involved in inaugurating the Levites. The Levites are brought to the world and the Israelites lay their hands on them. This is a powerful gesture. By laying hands, the people are essentially saying, "We identify with you. You represent us in service. We are transferring a sort of authority or a blessing to you." It's like a big community group hug via hands on heads. After that, Aaron will offer the Levites before the Lord as a wave offering from the Israelites. So Aaron symbolically presenting them to God, perhaps by lifting his hands toward them and God signifying, Lord, Here are the Levites. We give them to you for your service. They are called a wave offering so that they may do the service of the Lord. Then the Levites lay their hands on the heads of those two bulls. One bull is sacrificed as a sin offering, the other as a burnt offering to make atonement for the Levites. So, so after all that, the Levites are officially ready. The text notes that the Levites are taken as holy or holy, given to God in place of all the firstborn of Israel. Throwback to Exodus. Remember how God claimed all firstborn males as his after saving them in Egypt. So here God is swapping. Instead of each family giving their firstborn sons to tabernacle duty, he takes the tribe of Levi as a collective substitute. God says, and I'm paraphrasing, they're mine. I've taken them instead of every firstborn. I sanctified the firstborn for myself when I struck down Egypt's firstborn. But now I take the Levites for myself out of the Israelites. This shows how the Levites have a special role standing in on behalf of all the people. The benefit, the Levites will do the service at the tent of and prevent plague from coming on the people when the people approach a sanctuary. Essentially, by having properly consecrated folks handling holy things, it keeps the rest of the Israelites from accidentally offering God's holiness and getting smitten. The Levites are like buffers. So Moses, Aaron, and the congregation do all this. They follow God's instructions to the letter. The Levites are purified, washed, and shaved, sacrificed for, and then presented. Aaron waves them before the Lord, and voila, the Levites start their sacrifice at the tent of meeting under Aaron's supervision. The text emphasizes that they did everything as the Lord commanded Moses. A successful ceremony. Perhaps the newly minted Levites breathed a sigh of relief that their initiation rite was over. Now, the chapter then adds on one more instruction from the Lord, a clarification on the age of service for Levites. This applies to the Levites, God says. They start duty at age 25 and retire at 50. Once a Levite hits the big 50, they must stop performing the regular work. They can still assist their fellow Levites in guard duties or helping out, but they should no longer do the heavy lifting or core tasks. It's like a mandatory retirement plan to make sure the workforce stays, fit. God basically says, let the younger guys handle that and let the elders mentor and support them, support from the sidelines. Interestingly, earlier in Numbers, it mentioned Levites from 30 to 50. Here it says 25 to 50. Possibly the 5-year difference is like the training period that I've mentioned. Like you start training at 25. Or you start your apprenticeship at 25, fully on duty by 30. And then wrap it up by 50. It's like going to school, I guess. You're going to school for 5 years and you start working at 30. In any case, God institutes an age limit, which is rather forward thinking. No endless working until you drop at 50. A Levite can enjoy retirement. I wish that's how it is now too. Like people should just retire at 50. No more, being in the administration after 50. To sum up, chapter 8, we set the lights, we cleaned the Levites, and we got them on the job, all while implementing the first known case of early retirement benefits. The community is now fully prepped. Leadership in place. Workforce in place. All good to go. And then everyone shining, Chapter 8 shines light on two big themes, illumination and dedication. The menorah's lamp being set to light up the space in front can symbolize how God's truth and presence are meant to shine outward, illuminating the path. It wasn't enough to light the lamps, they had to be positioned effectively. In our lives, there's a lesson. It's one thing to have light, but are we positioning it to illuminate what's ahead? Are we using our light to help others see? Jesus later said, "No one lights a lamp and hides it." So here, God basically says, light that lamp and make sure it actually lights up the house. The care given to the menorah reminds us to be intentional about sharing the light we've been given. All right, fun fact corner. So the 7-branched lampstand, which is the menorah described here, became one of the most enduring symbol in Judaism. In fact, the official emblem of the modern state of Israel features a depiction of the temple menorah, flanked by olive branches. And if you ever visit Rome, check out the Ark of Titus. A carving on the 1st century monument shows Roman soldiers carrying the Jewish menorah after the destruction of Jerusalem in around 70 AD. The menorah on the arch actually, is depicted as a tall golden 7 lampstand, a direct descendant of the one Aaron lit. So the lampstand in the book of Numbers chapter 8 isn't just an ancient history. It's an icon recognized to this day, representing light, wisdom, and enduring faith of people. All right, that is it for chapter 8. All right, chapter 9. We are almost done. This chapter brings us to different scenes. One about keeping the Passover, and one about the famous cloud by day or fire by night GPS system God used. Both parts carry the themes of remembering and following God's lead, with a dash of flexibility and grace. The chapter opens in the first month of the 2nd year since leaving Egypt. While Israel is still camped at Sinai, it's time to celebrate the Passover again, 1 year after the original Passover in Egypt. Can you believe that? It's been 1 year. Well, not really, but if you've been listening. God reminds Moses, "Let the Israelites keep the Passover as its appointed time, the 15th day of this month at twilight, following all the rules and rites." Moses spreads the word, and the people prepare to commemorate that defining moment in their liberation, probably roasting lambs, eating unleavened bread and bitter herbs, and retelling the story of how God spared them and struck Egypt. So far, so good. But then a problem is brought to Moses' attention. A group of men comes forward looking rather distressed. They say, "Moses, we have a dilemma. We are unclean because of a dead body, and it's Passover time. According to the law, we can't participate in a sacred feast while ritually impure. But it's not fair. Why should we be kept from presenting the Lord's offering at Passover just because we had to handle a corpse?" Basically, these guys had the misfortune of a death in the family or some contact with a corpse right before Passover, which by the law barred them from the community worship until purified. They're sincerely upset about missing out on Passover, which is actually a good sign of their devotion. I love that their concern isn't like, "Oh yeah, we have an excuse to skip," but rather, "We don't want to miss this. Like, isn't there something we can do?" Moses, faced with a question that wasn't covered in the handbook, wisely says, "Hold on, let me check with the boss." He tells them to wait while he seeks God's direction. So, important lesson, even Moses didn't wing it. Yeah, so he asked God for clarification on tough questions. God's answer comes, and it introduces a really gracious provision. Pesach Sheni, the second Passover. God says, essentially, if any of you or your descendant is unclean due to dead body or is on a distant journey, traveling, couldn't get back in time, or whatever the reason is, you don't have to entirely miss out. You shall still observe the Passover, but you'll do it 1 month later, on the 14th day of the second month at twilight. He instructs that these bake-up Passover celebrants must still follow all the normal Passover procedures. Roast lamb with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. Or leave none till morning. Don't break any of the lamb's bones, etc. It's essentially a do-over date for those legitimately prevented from the main event. However, God also makes clear this is not a free pass to procrastinate for no reason. If someone is clean and not traveling, basically fully able to do the Passover at the normal time, but they just skip it out of neglect or stubbornness, well, that's a serious offense. That person shall be cut off from the people and will bear the consequences of sin. In other words, no willy-nilly skipping holy days just because you didn't feel like it. It's a covenant requirement. The second chance Passover is for genuine cases of impurity or absence, not for slackers. Also, interestingly, God adds, if there's a foreigner living among you who wants to celebrate the Passover to the Lord, they can do so as long as they follow the same rules. One law for foreigner and natives regarding Passover. This shows that even non-Israelites who dedicated themselves to Israel's God were welcome to join in the defining Feast of Freedom. So, Moses announces this new rule, and presumably those men who were unclean are relieved. Like, oh, thank God, literally. We get to observe Passover next month instead. It's a beautiful example of God's flexibility and grace. Isn't God just so amazing? Like, he's the best. So the best. The greatest. So he didn't change the Passover date for everyone, but he built in an accommodation for those who, through no fault of their own, couldn't celebrate on time. It's like God saying, I don't want you to miss out on this communion with me. If you can't do it now, we'll do it later. How many institutions offer makeup holidays? Here, God does. A glimpse of the principle that God desires inclusion, not exclusion, when it comes to worship. With Passover instructions sorted, the chapter shifts gear to describe how Israel's journey was guided by God's presence in a very visual way. Cue the cloud and fire GPS. From the day the tabernacle was set up, the cloud of God's glory covered it. By day, it was just a cloud hovering over the tent. By night, it had an appearance of fire lighting up like a giant night light over the camp. This cloud was not just for a show. It was the signal for when to camp and when to break camp. The text says it out clearly and repetitively in true number style. Whenever the cloud lifted up from over the tent, the Israelites would pack up and set out after it. Whenever the cloud settled down again, the Israelites would stop and camp there. If the cloud stayed put for a long time, the Israelites stayed put, faithfully waiting. If it was just a short time, they'd only camp a short time. If the cloud lifted in the middle of the night, surprise, folks, pack your tent in the dark, then they'd depart. If it stayed put for 2 days, a month, or a year, they wouldn't budge until it moved. Like, imagine living like this. You could wake up any given morning and see that divine cloud had lifted. Like, honey, quick, pack up everything. God's moving. Other times you might be in a nice spot for 3 weeks or months, wondering, will today be the day we move? Nope, cloud's still there. It required ultimate patience and readiness. The Israelites, when obedient, kept the charge of the Lord by following the cloud's lead. The chapter really drives it home by repeating, at the command of the Lord. They camped, and at his command they journeyed. They kept their eyes on that cloud constantly. It was literally divine guidance 24/7, a pillar of cloud by day to guide and a pillar of fire by night to illuminate. Talk about the original GPS, God's positioning system. Also, practically how comforting it must have been. Like, the desert is vast and daunting, but seeing that glow every night over the tent must have reassured them. Imagine being able to see that um God is here, like, yeah, we're not alone in the dark. And and by day the cloud likely provided some shade from the harsh sun when they camped, so that's a bonus. God was both guide and guard, leader and light. So chapter 9 in summary: God ensured everyone can celebrate deliverance, even those delayed, and God Himself provides a constant presence to guide the journey. It's about sacred memory, which is the Passover, and sacred guidance, which is the cloud, both crucial for a community on the move. Wow. All right, fun fact corner. Pesach Sheni, the second Passover. The extra Passover day granted in this chapter became known in Hebrew as Pesach Sheni, meaning second Passover. It's actually observed in Jewish tradition on 14 Iyar, 1 month after the regular Passover on 14 Nisan. To this day, some consider it a minor observance where people reflect on second chances. There's even a custom among some Jews to eat matzah again on that day to commemorate the opportunity God gave to those who missed the first round. Pesach Sheni has come to symbolize that it's never too late, a community do-over. It preaches the encouraging the message that even if you were impure or far away, God opens the door for you to still partake in holiness. Gotta love a God who builds makeup exams into the calendar. All right, and that's it for chapter 9. Oh, let me just take a sip of my water. Ooh, we're at 47 minutes. All right, chapter 10. This chapter is a chapter where things literally get loud and moving. We've been at Sinai for a long stretch, receiving laws and getting organized. Now, finally, it's time to pack up camp and hit the road towards the promised land, but not without proper signals. Enter the silver trumpets, essentially the ancient version of a PA system, and an orderly marching arrangement. Plus, we get a little impersonal scene with Moses and his in-law in a stirring battle cry prayer that Moses uses. Let's break it down. This chapter begins with God telling Moses to make 2 silver trumpets, not little pocket trumpets, but long, straight metal horns, distinct from the ram's horn shofar we often think of. These are a different instrument altogether. These trumpets are to be hammered out of silver, so fancy, and are to be used for summoning the congregation and breaking camp. Essentially, they're multi-purpose signal horns. God gives Moses a little trumpet protocol manual. When both trumpets are blown long, that's a signal for all the people to assemble at the entrance of the tent of meeting. Whew. Where am I? Okay. If only one trumpet is blown, that's the cue for just the leaders, the heads of the tribes to gather. So a more selective summon. Maybe a leadership council meeting or of some sort. When you blow an alarm, short, sharp blasts. The camp set out in a specific order. First alarm means the tribes camped on the east side, which from chapter 2 we know is Judah's camp with Issachar and Zebulun will set out. A second alarm blast means the south side camp. The text doesn't explicitly mention here, but the pattern we can assume a third would cue the west side and a fourth the north side to move. Or possibly they only needed 2 alarms since the narrative earlier indicated the marching order inserts the Levites in between. In any case, the trumpet alarm coordinated the stage departure. Think of it like East Camp Go, blast, then South Camp Go, etc. So, when calling an assembly for a gathering, as opposed to war march, they blow, but not the same alarm, likely a different tone or pattern. Tradition says long continuous blast for assembly versus short staccato for moving. Only Aaron's sons, the priests, are authorized to blow these trumpets. This is interesting. Blowing the silver trumpets was a priestly duty. Not just anyone could toot, God's horn. It was considered a sacred act, and this instruction was to be followed forever in their generation. These trumpets weren't just for camping and moving either. God says, when you go to war in your land against an enemy oppressing you, sound an alarm with the trumpets. The blast will serve a spiritual function. It will remind God of you and you'll be saved from your enemies. In other words, the trumpet in battle was like the prayer in the form of a sound, a way of crying out to God for help. We actually see this later in Israel's history. For instance, when they, and this is a big spoiler if you didn't know, when they march around Jericho, they use trumpets. Though those were ram's horn, actually, the concept is similar. The idea is that by following God's command to signal, they invite God's intervention. Additionally, on your days of rejoicing, your festivals, and new moon celebration, you shall blow the trumpets over your burnt offering and peace offerings. So on happy occasions and worship times, blow away. It's to be a memorial before God, an audible reminder that here we are, God, your people celebrating in your presence. And God signals off that section with, I am the Lord your God, as if to say, yes, I'm listening to those trumpet notes. I'm here. I like to imagine the variety of sounds these silver trumpets must have made. Maybe a bright fanfare to gather everyone, So anyway, I lost my train of thought. So with signaling systems in place, in verse 11, it marks a big turning point. The cloud finally lifts from the tabernacle, signaling departure. It gives a precise timestamp. In the second year and the second month, on the 20th day of the month, the cloud rose up. This is essentially day one of the actual expedition to the promised land, after nearly a year at Sinai. Around third month of the year 1, now it's month 2 of year 2. The Israelites pack up and set out from the wilderness of Sinai, and the cloud leads them to settle in the wilderness of Paran. This is the start of their marching through the desert. The text then describes the order of march, which mirrors the arrangement given in chapter 2. First, the tribal division of Judah goes, flag held high. So tribe of Judah in front with Issachar and Zebulun's companies following behind Judah's leader. After the front group, the Gershonites and Merarites who carry the tabernacle's heavy piece set out with their wagons. They go early so that by the time everyone stops again, they can start setting up the tent structure at the next campsite before the holy furniture arrives. Next in line, the tribal division of Reuben marches. Then the Kohathites set out, carrying the sacred objects. The text notes that the tabernacle would be set up by the time the Kohathites arrived with the holy things, thanks to Gershon and Merari going ahead, so they could immediately place the furnishings where they belong without waiting around, holding a heavy ark guys, where do we put this? So again, logistics. After that, the tribal division of Ephraim goes. Finally, acting as the rear guard, the tribal division of Dan moves out. Dan's camp is last, making sure no stragglers or items are left behind, and presumably protecting from any threat coming from behind. Now, as they start their journey, Moses has a conversation with a relative named Hobab. The text identifies Hobab as the son of Ruel, the Midianite, Moses' father-in-law. Now, quick note. Moses' father-in-law is elsewhere named Jethro. Ruel might be an alternative name, or perhaps Ruel was Jethro's title or father. Scholar, I don't know. Scholars debate this. Either way, Hobab is likely Moses' brother-in-law. So Jethro or Ruel's son. Something like that. Hobab had apparently been visiting or even traveling with Israel up to Sinai. Now, as Israel is breaking camp to leave Sinai, Moses turns to Hobab and says, and I'm paraphrasing, "We're selling out to or for the place the Lord promised to give us. Come with us. We'll treat you well, for the Lord has promised good things to Israel." Moses is basically inviting Hobab to join the Israelites for the rest of the journey to Canaan, assuring him he'll share in the blessings. Hobab initially declines, like, "No, I will not go. I'm going back to my own land and family." Understandable. Maybe he missed home or felt like, this is your destiny, not mine. I'm a Midianite. I'll head back to Dan and the old life. But Moses doesn't give up. He presses. "Please don't leave us. You know the wilderness terrain like the back of your hand. You can be our eyes for us. If you come, we will share with you whatever good the Lord does for us." This is interesting. Moses, who has God's cloud to guide him, still values Hobab's local expertise. You know where to camp, he says. Perhaps Moses is being practical. And yes, God shows the general direction, but a human scout's knowledge of specific watering holes and hazard is invaluable. Or maybe Moses just really wanted the company of family. Either way, he promises Hobab a share in the blessing. The text doesn't explicitly tell us Hobab's answer here, but later on in the book of Judges, the descendants of Hobab, also called Kenites, are indeed living among the Israelites in Canaan, implying Hobab probably said, "All right, I'll tag along." So likely Moses' persuasion worked. It's a touching little aside. Even with all Israel's divine guidance, Moses reached out for humanity partnership. It shows that faith in God's guidance and wise human counsel aren't mutually exclusive. Moses wanted both the cloud and Hobab's eyes. Finally, the chapter concludes with a beautiful snippet of what Moses would say whenever the ark set out when it came to rest. It's almost like the traveler's liturgy of Israel. When the ark started forward, Moses would shout, "Arise, O Lord, and let your enemies be scattered, and let those who hate you flee before you." A short prayer, basically calling on God to lead the way and clear out any threats ahead. It portrays God as a warrior going before the marching Israel, causing any would-be attackers or obstacles to melt away. And when the ark came to rest, Moses would say, "Return, O Lord, to the myriad thousands of Israel." So in other words, come back to rest among us, Lord, among all these thousands of your people. This acknowledges God's presence, settling back down with the camp as they encamp. These acclamations emphasize that every step and stop is framed by an invitation for God to be with them, and the offense and in the resting defense. Interesting trivia. In Jewish tradition, these two verses Numbers chapter 10, verses 35 and 36 are set off in the Torah scroll by special inverted letter markings, considered almost as a book unto themselves. They're also, as we saw, used in synagogues today when taking out the Torah scroll. It's timeless, like rise up, Lord, and rest with us, Lord. The community's constant reliance on God, whether on the move or staying put. And with that, Israel leaves Sinai. The next chapter, well, on the next episode, will show how this journey unfolds. And then, spoiler, it's not all smooth sailing. But at this moment, hopes are high. God's presence is visible. The camp is organized, and the adventure truly begins. All right. Fun fact corner. Trumpets versus shofars. The two silver trumpets God commanded were a special design, straight metallic horns, about 2 feet long with flared ends, as described by historians. They are not the same as the ram's horn shofar. Later in scripture, both types are used for various purposes. For example, shofars, which are the ram horns, were blown at Jericho and to announce the year of Jubilee. Whereas these silver trumpets, also called, hang on, I'm going to try not to butcher this, Hazazerot, or something like that, were for the tabernacle rituals and signaling the camps. On the Arch of Titus in Rome, alongside the carved menorah, there are images of these exact silver trumpets being carried off by Roman soldiers. Yep. So, the Israelites are finally on the move. You can almost hear the triumphant trumpets blast still echoing. But if you listen closely, there's another sound brewing on the horizon of our story. So they've barely left Sinai, and some folks are already complaining, of course, like kids on the long road trip. Like, are we there yet? I'm hungry. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So in our next episode, we will see how this great wilderness adventure hits home, or, well, not really just hits bumpy roads very quickly. There will be fire, and not the cozy campfire kind. An insatiable craving for meat that brings a literal storm of quail, and Moses reaching a breaking point with the burden of leadership. Will this newly minted nation keep it together, or will they drive Moses up the wall? The journey to the promised land is just beginning, and so are the challenges. Stay tuned for Numbers 11 and beyond, where things get spicy and we learn what happens when the people test the patience of, well, the Almighty. So trust me, you don't want to miss the drama ahead. It's a mix of the miraculous and the murmurous. Kind of made up that word. So thank you for listening to Chapters and Chuckles by Kaye. If you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow, subscribe, and leave a review. You can catch new episodes on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Until next time, keep laughing, and as always, stay curious.